Okay, let's see if this works. Right, seems to be working. So hi, let me let me miniaturize the video recorder. Okay, so in this short video presentation, I'm going to develop an Angular application, um, and I'm going to develop this Angular application as the user interface for a previous PHP application that I already programmed for the PHP course. So this lecture about Angular, the Angular framework, it's going to be a hands-on lecture. I don't have any slides. I'm going to quickly introduce Angular in the beginning using the official Angular documentation, which is this one, and then I'm going to jumpstart to the part where I build a small Angular application for a previous um, for a previous for a previous PHP application that is already on the courses website, which is here. So if we go to the web programming course website and we go to PHP examples, this one, um, I'm going to use this pdo mvc.zip, which I've already downloaded, and I've already installed it here on my local XAMPP server. I'm going to quickly show you right now the basics of the application. So I have my XAMPP Apache web server and MySQL started. I have a bunch of tables. Maybe I should show them to you, right? So so my database is this one, WP, and I'm going to use two tables. One of them is students, which has names, password, has students, has an ID, each student has an ID, a name, a password, and a group ID. And then I'm also going to use this grades table, which has each record has an ID, then a student ID. The student ID is the student ID from the students table, and then the name of the course and a grade for that course for that student. That's it. So just a simple database, simple application. Um, Now let me open the source of this by the way of this PDO MVC application. By the way, I will post another link here with the source of the Angular application that I'm building right now after this video recording is completed. So I'm going to post it right here after the Ajax and PHP and JSON. Okay. So let me talk a little. Let me introduce a little bit this PDO MVC.zip application. So I already have it here, right, in the htdocs wp PDO MVC directory. So this one here, actually, I have all the PHP examples that are present on the courses website, which are these ones. So let's go here and let's open this directory into Sublime. Right, I don't need this anymore, so should open the folder. So we should go to C exam htdocs wp pdo mvc, right, this one. Okay. Okay, and this is just a readme. The first, let me open the application in the browser and then I'll talk about it. So if we go, I don't need this anymore, hopefully. If we go to localhost, Remember that my web server and MySQL are already started here, right? If we go to localhost WP, and then let's choose from here the PDO MVC application. The, the client, I mean the user interface or the client is this one, primapagina.html, this file, and this file actually makes AJAX requests to the rest of the application, which is just an MVC application, an MVC PHP application. So this is the client, and the rest is the MVC app. Well, also the JavaScript includes jQuery, it's also part of the client, but the rest of it, view, repo, model, and controller, are parts of the backend of the PHP server. And I'm going to show you the application right now. And later on, we will be replacing this user interface, this front-end application, which is just based on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and mostly AJAX calls. We will be replacing this with an Angular application. But the backend part, that is this files, controller, model, reports, repo, repository, and view, they stay the same. So this is similar to what you have to do for the Angular lab. So keep the PHP application unchanged, or mostly unchanged, and build a new user interface, a new front-end code based on Angular. Okay, so let me load this. Maybe we need the console and the developer tools here. I'm not really sure, but let's try it. Okay, so here I have I can give the name of a student. I know there is one called Newton, I think, and it'll give me details from the students table about this is just AJAX request. You can see it here. It's an AJAX request sent to the controller with some with a query string action get user and user equals Newton, and the response is just it's just a JSON. We should see it here. Yeah, it's a JSON with the ID, so an object with the ID, name, password, group ID, and grades. No grades. Okay, and the second functionality is this one, where we get all the students and all the grades in the same div. This one. Okay, and yeah, you see here the ID, the name of the students. Some students don't have a name. This table is not quite correct because you see there are a bunch of students with the same ID, so I've just added them manually. So this table is not quite valid, but it will be okay for our application. And that's about it. That's the whole functionality of the front end. Okay. The backend, however, the entry point of the backend of the PHP server is this file, controller PHP, because it's model view controller, so all the requests go to this controller. The backend is more developed, meaning it has more use cases, but they are not linked to the user interface. But we can call them here. For example, so we call controller, right? So controller, right, and it needs some parameters. First, it's add the one use case is well, let's see all the use cases actually. Right here, let's go to the controller. So you see, so okay, so the controller is including a model and a view. Otherwise, it has it's just a class. It has a view and a model, which are initialized here in the construct. I'll tell you in a couple of minutes about it. This is just the class, the controller class, some methods, which are private methods, and the main body of this PHP script is just initializing or instantiating a controller and calling the service method on that controller. That's it. And in the service method, I have a bunch of services. They are identified by the action parameter. They all assume that they receive get request, HTTP get requests. And what differentiates between all the services that this controller can provide is the action parameter. So when the action is get user, it executes, it calls this function, which is the function get user, with this parameter. The function get user is this one, which just calls some method that performs the logic from the model. So it gets a student from the database, this student actually, which is received in the get HTTP request, and with the student it just creates a JSON view of the data of the student. That's it, by calling the output method of the view. The view is quite simple. Let's start with that first. So it's very simple. We have three views. They are provided by this class. Nothing in the construct. This one is actually not used, so actually we have two usable views. One of them is this one, which just encodes an associative array, which is received here. It just encodes that associative array as JSON. And the other one is this one, which just returns a simple JSON, so one object with one property called result, and the value, this parameter, which is just useful for example, for adding a new record, which just returns success or failure, or for deleting a record from the grades table, which just returns success or failure, or for updating a record. That's it. And so this view is useful mostly for inserting, updating and deleting to return success or failure, and this one is used for returning, for selecting things, for selecting either one student record or several student records. So that's very simple. Then we have some entities in our model. One of them is student and another one is grade. So let's close this one. So let me show you a little bit about the model. So we have this model PHP, which performs all the business logic by calling functions from the repository, which links to the database. But besides this model, which is, let's say, a little bit more complex, not that complex, we have some entities from our domains, and these are just simple classes that match the entities from the database. So we have a grade matching the grades table, and we have a student class matching the students table from the database. The student class, they implement JSON serializable in order to convert objects of type students to JSON expressions in the view. The fields are the ones from the table. They have a construct, and they have the get and set functions. And then I have this function because the class implements JSON serializable in order to convert this to a JSON expression, to convert a student object to a JSON expression. The grades are actually these are simple data, okay, from the database, but the grades are actually an array of grades, and each grade from this array is actually a grade object, okay, which has the course and the grade, right? So it has a course and a grade. I could have also added a student ID because the student ID is also present in the grades table, but I just omitted it. And that's about it. So these are the entities of our model, or the domain of our model. So let's close them. You've already seen the view, which is a simple one. Let's also see the repository, which is also a simple class that connects to a MySQL database. It connects to a MySQL database using the object-oriented interface, the PDO interface. It has some data about the connection. The host, the username, the database, the username, default password. I build a connection here by specifying a connection string and some options here. And then I instantiate this PDO object with that connection string, the user and the password, and those options there. Okay, if there is an error, yeah. Here I have some generic private functions for selecting, for inserting, for deleting into and updating some generic table. I don't really use those functions. These are mostly template functions that maybe customized later. The functions that I use are this ones. So for example, this one selects a student, so selects everything from students where name is equal to this parameter and return the result set as an associative array. Then this one selects all the students and also return the result set as associative array. This one selects grades for student. Okay, so I have a student ID and it selects all the grades of this student, right? And return everything as an associative array. And we have some modifying functions, these ones. This one adds a grade for a student ID, so adds this grade for this course for this student ID. This translates to an SQL insert statement, so insert into grades, the student ID and the course and the grade. It returns the number of affected rows, which I return it further to the calling method. In the same way, I have an update grade for a student, which translates to an update SQL statement on the grades table. And then I have a remove grade for student, which removes the grade or the grades of this student for this course by deleting one or more records from the grades table. And that's it. So this is the detail. This is the repository class that connects to a database. Let's go back to the controller, which calls things. Okay, so we have a bunch of actions. We have getUser, which calls this method, which we call this method that returns details about the students by calling a method from the model. I didn't show you the model yet, but I will. And then formatting the result set as a JSON expression. Then I have this getAllGrades, which returns all the students with the grades by calling the method from a model and formatting the output as a JSON expression. Okay, the result set formatted as a JSON expression. Another method is getAllStudent, but this time without the grades, by calling another method from the model and formatting the result set as a JSON expression. Another one is addGrade for student. This one requires some parameters from the request, right? Student ID, course, and grade, and it calls this function, which just calls the function from the model for adding a new grade. And this time I'm just returning a result set in the form of by using the second method of the view. So I'm just actually returning a simple JSON object which has just the result property with the value either success or failure. Remember this, return result. So it just returns this JSON expression, a JSON simple object with the property result equal to the value of the parameter that is received here. Okay, this parameter can be either success or failure. And then I have another method, another service, update grade for student and remove grade for student. They all call the corresponding method from the controller. So the update grade will call this method, which is very similar to add, but it performs an update using a specific method from the model. And also it returns the result success or failure to the caller, which is the HTML, which is the browser. The HTML part in the browser, and another one for removing grade for student, right? And I'm going to show I don't have the UI for this method, so my UI, which is just this prima pagina, my UI only uses the let me open that too. Only uses this method, getUser, getAllGrade, and getAllStudents. I can also show you that one. And the way I use it, well, it's the HTML is quite simple. Some sections here, and I have some AJAX calls here, right? So I have them here, the document ready. Okay. So when I click the getUser button, which is this one, it sends a get request and parses the output as a JSON, the response of this request as JSON. So it sends the request to controller PHP with these parameters: action get user, and the value of the user is the data input by the user in this input field, right? And when the result is received from the server, the controller PHP, this method show user is called, which just takes the user JSON received and just displays its fields in this main div. Okay, this main div is this one, an empty section. The second method is when I click the get grades button, which is this one, get all grades, and the first one was get details. Okay, so when I click the get all grades, I send another request to the same controller PHP, this time only with the parameter action get all grades, and I call this function when the result is received from the server. This function just does the same thing as the first one, but this time we have an array of, we can also see them here, an array of, not here in the browser, we have an array of students, and each student has an array of grades. We can actually see them. I think, yeah, let me send the request again. Okay, here. And I think I can, yeah, I can show it on the console because it's printed here, but I can also show it here. So if we go here, we see the JSON. So it has it's an array of students. Okay, yeah, you see it better here because it's printed on the console. It's an array of students, and each student has an ID, a name, a password, a group ID, and not visible here is the grades of each student. So for example, this one has some grades. The grades is an array with this one 2 components. Okay, the first value is course web programming grade 7, the second one course computer networks grade 8. Some of the students don't have grades, for example this student, number 2, so the second value. This one doesn't have grades. Okay, the array is empty, and that's it. And if we go here, we just take this grades JSON and display them into a table, right? So take each element of the grades. Each element of this grades is actually a student. Do some CSS styling, not that important. Get the student ID, name, and group, okay, and then get the grades of the student by parsing another array, the grades, the student grades array, and also display them in the table in this content, and that's it. Okay, so this is the client, the user interface, the client of our application is based on Ajax and JavaScript, and of course CSS and HTML. And it only calls this method get user get all grades, or yeah, get all students. It doesn't call this. So this method add grade for student, update grade for student, they are not linked to the user interface, but it will be when I build the Angular UI. Okay, for now I can just call them here directly in the browser. So add grade for student, let's say student ID, let's say this one 12, which is Spider-Man. Okay, so student ID 12. The course should be testing web UI or something like that, and the grade is 10. So if I do something like this, okay, the result is success, right? If I go, yeah, if I go back here and I get all grades, I see for the 12, I have 2 students with ID 12, right? But I see this new course testing web UI grade is 10. Let's change it if we want to. So I need to go to the controller, controller PHP. The action now it's update grade for student. The course is so the student ID is actually 12, right? This one 12. The course is testing web UI, needs to have exactly the same value with the specific case. So testing web UI, and the grade should be I don't know, 7, right? The result is success. See all the grades here. Okay, right, and yeah, the grade is 7, and so it changed. It's the same in the database. I'm not going to show you right now. And the same with the delete. I won't show you this delete function to save some time. Okay, this is with the remove, the delete. Okay, something that the part of the MVC PHP project that we haven't seen is the model, which performs all this business logic required by the controller, or all these methods. So let's go to that. So the model is actually just a link from the from the controller to the repository class that adds stuff to the database. Okay. This is just the model. It has connection to the database through this dbutil class that I've already shown you. It has the function getStudent by calling a function in the db object, and then building an object, a student object, and returning it. This one also builds a result set by calling something from the db object, the database, the repository class, and builds a student array with grades. For each student, it finds out the grades of the student, it adds those grades into this array, and then it pushes the student into a student array and returns the student and get all students. So every method from this model that performs the business logic of our application actually calls methods from the database class, the dbutils object. Okay, and then organizes everything in an array of students or grades. This is for get student grades. This is for adding grade to student, and yeah, that's it. Okay, this is our MVC project. Right, I don't think we need this anymore. Right, and now let's build an Angular application. Let me first tell you about Angular a little bit. So what is Angular? Well, Angular is the latest version. You can download it from here, Angular.io. Well, I'll show you that in a minute. I have already installed Angular here, but it's very simple. Angular is just a JavaScript framework. It is actually built on TypeScript, which is a superset of JavaScript, invented as far as I know by Microsoft. So it's just JavaScript with types. So it's a more strict form of JavaScript. It has types associated to variables, and this makes the debugging and development a lot easier because TypeScript is very similar to a strongly typed programming language like C# or Java. So you have types for the variables, but there's also it is also flexible, meaning you can still have just like you would have in JavaScript, you can still have objects without a type. Actually, everything you can write in JavaScript, you can also write in TypeScript. So if you know JavaScript, you can write JavaScript code directly in TypeScript. The TypeScript, a TypeScript file has a TS extension, you will see in a minute. And actually, Angular is a set of, it's a framework where you develop several components. The components are the building blocks of an Angular application. And you develop components that components are just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript bundles that handle the display of a small part of the screen, that handles the view of a part of the screen. For example, you can have a component that is responsible for displaying this blue header, okay, with JavaScript functionality, CSS, and HTML, of course, HTML components. And an Angular application is just a set of those components, a set of Angular components responsible for displaying a specific part of the screen. Of course, it's more than this. I'm not going to show you today everything about Angular. I'm just going to show you the basics. Let's go down here, I think. Okay, besides components, there's an Angular router which allows you to build routes in your Angular application, going from one view to another one. There's Angular forms, which I won't be using Angular router in my simple demo that I'm going to show you today. Let me check that the recording is still running. Right. Then there's Angular forms, which allow you to bind Angular or Angular JavaScript properties to HTML DOM properties. I'm going to show you this. Then there's an important one, Angular HTTP client, which we will use in order to replace all these Ajax calls from the prima pagina. Okay. So we will replace all these Ajax calls in jQuery. We will replace this using this and this using Angular HTTP client. Okay, animations that I'm not going to use to show you, but they are interesting. Tools for building progressive web applications that are web applications that work developed for the desktop and also for the mobile, and Angular schematics. And yeah, I'm not going to show you this. Okay, in order to install Angular, it's very simple. You just need to install a Node.js, interpreter and a Node.js package on the local computer. You can download it from here and just install it in the local computer. I've downloaded the zip version and I've just unzip it here. So it would install these tools and also Node.js modules, except this Angular, which is installed later. So it has only these modules. The package manager, sorry, the package, the modules and the package manager, which is here. These are the modules and the package manager. So in order to install Angular, you first need to install Node.js and the npm package manager. The npm package manager is already included in the Node.js package that you downloaded from here. So if you download it from here, I've downloaded the zip archive and I've unzip it here into this directory. Okay, and after this you need to install the Angular package, which you install it, the Angular client command line interface package, which you install it by calling a method, the method install on the npm package manager with this Angular command line interface, the Angular client. Okay, and I've already done this, and this one installs the ng tool of Angular, which are just links to the ng tool. It also installs here. It also installs the Angular CLI here, right? And the ng tool, which is here. Right. So this is what you need. Everything in this directory. This is what you need in order to run and develop Angular applications. So you need Node.js together with npm package manager, which is installed here, and then install Angular, the Angular module for Node.js. Okay, using this command, and that's it. And now we are ready to develop our own application. I already have this application developed. Let me show you how it works, right? Let me show you how it works, and then we will develop a new application based on this one, because it will take me quite some time to write all the code manually. Okay, so we will be copying and pasting code from this application into our new application. But basically our new application, our new Angular application will be a user interface for the PDO MVC PHP server, and will do the same thing as this my app application, but we will just develop it from scratch, right? So let me first show you what the Angular application that I will develop will do by just running this my app application. So I have here a terminal, right? I am here in the my app directory, this one directory, and I can start my app by calling the ng utility, the Angular client, ng, and then serve, right? When you first run this, it will take it will take a couple of seconds, actually close to a minute, especially if your notebook is not that powerful as it is in my case. But if you leave this ngserve command running, you can then modify your application, modify your JavaScript files, and the ng tool will figure it out when some files of the application have changed. It will compile everything, and the ng tool will compile everything and refresh everything, and you can actually just hit refresh in the browser. Actually, it's automatically refreshed in the browser, Sorry, I have it here. I have here the application. So now it's not yet started. This one actually just builds everything, compiles everything, and builds everything ready to be deployed in an Angular application, and it also starts an HTTP server listening on port 4200 where you can serve your Angular application. We have to wait a little bit. The first time I'm running this, so I've told you it lasts 1 minute and something, but if you leave it running, when you update some files from your Angular application, it doesn't take that much time. So yeah. So just wait a little bit, and yeah, so everything is, yeah, the application is deployed on this server that it is started by the ng utility here. Everything compiles successfully, everything is okay. I can just hit refresh, or I can just leave this stuff the way it is. Right, and it has those two buttons. It has two buttons which provide the functionality of showing the students and this without grades and the student with grades. If I click this one, I have an error here that you see is the course error, the cross origin resource sharing. In order to pass over this error, I need to slightly modify the backend, the PHP files. Actually, I need to modify the controller. Just go here and just comment this one. I'm going to return back to this stuff when I show you how to build the when I'll start building the Angular application. So let me just comment this out, okay? Which just sets a field into the HTTP header of the response that is returned by this controller. So let me just save this one and leave it this way. And now let me click again. Okay, so we have the students here, right? They are displayed here without the grades. Then if I click this one, it disappears. If I click this one, it shows the students with the grades, and I can select the student. For example, I don't know, this one, right? And it shows me here. It shows me the details about the student, actually the grades of the student, or I can update this grade, right? So 10, right? So I give it is automatically updated here, but not on a database because of the two-way binding of Angular. If I want to update it in the database, I need to click this update, right? The result is success. Then normally I should have refreshed the list. I mean, it's not required, but you can actually, if I click this again, then all this data will be taken from the database. So you see that the value here is 10, right? I can also delete this, right? I can delete this grade, right? And it is deleted from the database. It's not actually refreshed here. I should have normally called this method that refreshes the table again, but I didn't. Okay, but we can do this by clicking this again. So you see here that it doesn't. This unnamed student doesn't have this other grade for this other course. Only this one, right? I can also remove this grade, so this student won't have any grade if I click this one. Okay, and then if I do the refresh again, it doesn't have any grade, and I can also add a new grade for a course like I don't know, graphics. Okay, and the grade is 8, and I can add the grade. Okay, the result is success. It's not visible here, but if I do the refresh, it is here in the database. So this is the functionality that I'm going to develop. This is the functionality of the Angular application that I will develop. Of course, this is already developed, but we will do this development from scratch by copying and pasting code from this My App application. Okay, and this My App application is just the Angular user interface for all the backend functionality in the PDO MVC PHP application. Okay, let me undo what I did to correct correct the course problem. So let me comment this again. Right, and now let's build a new application. I'll end this. Okay. In order to build a new application, we should go to the top level. Here we have this my app application and the Node.js together with Angular. So in order to do this, I need to call here I need to call the ng tool if the ng tool, I mean, right, so the ng tool is here in this directory node, and is this one, okay, the ng tool here, sorry, ng, right, which is just a link to the ng tool here in Angular in bin, this one. Right, yeah. So in order for this to work, right, you need to add this directory node to your path in order to be able to execute the ng tool here outside the node directory. So for me, it's already added here. I've already done this, so I've just added this directory to the path, to this path, but we can add it again anyway. You can do it like this. Set path equals to, I just copy this path, right? So this path c temp angular node whatever, yeah? I just copy it here, okay, c temp angular like that, and it's useful to also concatenate the previous value of the path variable. By the way, in Windows you do it like this. With a semicolon here. In Linux you would have a column, this one, but in Windows you have a semicolon, and then the variable of the variable path you can access it in Windows using this percent signs, and in Windows, and in Linux you would use the dollar sign. Okay, but we are in Windows here. I've tried to develop this in Windows because I assume most of you have Windows operating systems. Okay, so we can do this again, and if I'm doing this, then you will see this ctemp angular node.js another time placed here. Okay, if I want to see the value of the path again, and this time I would have ctemp angular node.js and another ctemp angular node.js, and then this is valid only for this command com. By the way, I've started this like that, command cmd. So I've started this command com prompt using cmd. It's already started, and this setting is only valid for this cmd. Okay, right. So let's start a new application. So ng new. The previous application was called my app. Let's call now the new application student app. It will take a couple of seconds, maybe minutes, in order to generate all those files. I'm going to show you what it generated, and then I'm going to open the directory that was generated into my editor, which is Sublime. You can also use Visual Studio Code, which is very useful for Angular. I kind of like this. I kind of like the Sublime editor for the colors. Yeah. Okay, so let's see if okay. Okay, this one asks if you want a stricter version of Angular that would check, that would this one allows you, it will capture errors sooner, so it will allow you to capture errors sooner, but we don't need this, so let's use not. If I want to add Angular routing, well, let's say I do, although I won't show you examples with the routing modules today. Now it asks us what kind of CSS preprocessor I want to use. Let me choose this one because I think I've shown you a SAS example when I did the CSS course. Although in our application, I won't be using CSS preprocessor. I'm just going to use regular CSS. But all these CSS preprocessors actually are superset of regular CSS. So in all of them, you can just write simple CSS. So let's choose this one. Now it creates the files required for our Angular application. We just need to wait a little bit. Actually, I've seen that in this application that I'm trying to match, I've chose the SCSS preprocessor. Now I've chosen a different one, but regular CSS should work on both. Let's hope that's not a problem. If it is a problem, I have to change SAS to SCSS. Okay. Meanwhile, I can show you part of the files that it generated. So it generated this directory, right? Together, this is for end-to-end testing. We will not use it. This is some configuration. We will only use this there will be some other directories generated here, but we will use only this source directory and namely this app directory, right? I'm gonna open it in a couple of seconds. I mean, after this is done. Okay, let's wait a little bit. Let's check meanwhile that the video recording works. Right, so we have to wait a little bit. Let's say meanwhile I will show you. Okay, we will actually use two components. Remember that this is the application that is already built, and we will try to copy this. We will actually use two components. One of them is the student, which displays the students without grades, and the other one is the student grades, which display the students with grades. And then we will use a service, which is this one, that connects to the PHP backend, this application, the PDO MVC application, this one. Okay, it connects to that one. And that's about it. There's some logic into this. By default, an Angular application comes with this component, app component. And I did some changes here too. Okay, as you see here, let me close this, and also this. That doesn't matter. As you see here, an Angular component has an HTML file, a style file, and this specification file is not used. It's only generated. You don't need to modify it. And this TypeScript file, which is the JavaScript, actually the TypeScript functionality of the component. They are all called by the name of the component: student.component HTML, SCSS, and TS. And the same for students grade, sorry. So we have the students grade HTML part, the SCSS part, the specification we ignore it, and the TS part, which is a JavaScript functionality. And then we have the default component, which is this one: app component HTML, app component SCSS, and the TS, right? Then we have some other files, which is modules, the module that this application uses. This is a service component that I created, and I will show you. And these are just some simple interfaces for the student, and yeah, has the fields of the student and the grade. That is another interface for the grade. Remember that TypeScript is a typed JavaScript, so that's why I need these interfaces to be types. to service types. And otherwise we won't be using the asset, the environment directory. Yeah, we will do some modifications into the app component HTML and app component TS and the app module TS. Yeah, we'll also do some modifications here. Let's see if this, it's not completed. It installs the packages in our application. These packages required by Angular. Okay, yeah, have to wait. Let's just wait a little. I mean, let's just wait a little bit. We should also, yeah, we should open the directory here. So open it. Open the directory of our new application, the student application. So we go to C, then temp, Angular, and this application. But we are interested in the source app directory. This one contains the sources. Right. Let's go now to the previous application because we will be copying code from this application. Right. Okay. Let's close this one so that I don't have many. I guess. Let's close this one so I don't have many. I don't have many Sublime windows open. Okay, seems like it's done. You can ignore this and you can just change to the change directory to the new application, which is student app. And then you can, from the root directory of the student app application, you can just start to see how this template demo application looks like in the browser. Okay, by calling the ng tool and then serve. Remember, we need to wait a little bit when running this ng-serve the first time, because it builds the Angular application and then it starts the HTTP server in order to serve it. So we have to wait a little bit. And then we will refresh this, which is this will be, I mean, we will hit refresh here, but it doesn't work yet because the server is not started yet and the application is not built yet. But this is the port of the Angular HTTP server that will be started here. So let's wait a little bit. I mean, yeah, meanwhile I can actually show you. So the application has a default routing module. We won't be using this. And it has a default application for the whole page, which is the app component. It has 4 files, but we will be ignoring this spec file. So it has the HTML part, the Sass part, okay, which is empty. The TS part, which is this one, it just tells you that this is a component. It imports the component from Angular core and it decorates this component with the component decorator. it specifies that this application can be referred in an HTML file using this custom tag called app_root. The template URL, which is actually the HTML part that will be displayed for this application, is in this file, this one here, and the styles are specified by this this file, which is this one. Okay. The title is the student app. We can change this, right? Student application. This is the class responsible for this main component. We will not change this class, but we will change the class for these other components that we will add, the student component and the student grades component. Let's see what happened. Okay, it's compiling, right? Okay, so we've changed this, and let's see how the app component HTML template looks like. Okay, it says here that this is just a content, it's a placeholder and can be replaced, so it has a style, this style. We will use parts of this style. Okay, style, yes, it is responsive, right? And then it has the actual HTML part, so it has a div, some image, another divs, and so on until the end, right? And here it has the router that we won't be using. So all this part from here, okay, to the beginning of the file can be removed. It's just a demo example. Okay, it seems like everything went okay. Let me try to serve the application here. Not here, sorry, here, localhost. Okay, and it shows you this, right? So a bunch of components. We should change the title here. Sorry, we should go here to the app component TS. We have changed the title, but we didn't save this, so let's save this. And we can use this title. I think it's already used here somewhere, but we can use it. Okay, we can use the value of a field or of a property like this one. This is just a property, just a field of the class app component, and we can use it in the HTML template like this. So double curly brackets like this. So let's also save this one. This ng-serve should automatically catch the fact that I've modified some files. So I've modified, well, this file I didn't modify, but I modified this title and I saved it by hitting Ctrl S. I saved it here. So this ng-serve should automatically catch the fact that I've changed a couple of files, and it will compile it automatically and build it automatically, and it will serve it again automatically here. You see that the title changed, okay? Student application, okay? Which is what I've written here, student application. It changed automatically. Okay, so let's try to build our application. I've told you that we will copy and paste code from the previous application that I developed. Okay, so let's go to, and I'm going to do this because it takes more time just to manually write the whole code. So let's go here into the CSS and see what I have left here. I've moved this. Let me remove this everything. Okay, let me just remove this. I mean, yeah, I've just removed this this style. I kept part of it, so I removed this. I've kept part of it, but I didn't place it here. I placed it in this style component, right? And the part of it that I kept in the style component was this one for setting the font, and then the blue toolbar, this blue toolbar at the beginning of this blue toolbar at the beginning of the screen, at the top of the screen. I've also removed these icons for Twitter and YouTube. So I've kept only the content for the toolbar and the content which is this content, right? And the font. Okay, so I just take this and just place it into the style file, which is this one, right? Place it here, save it. Okay, then go to the HTML template, and I've told you that I kept the toolbar, this welcome message, and I didn't use the Twitter and the YouTube. I didn't use it, and let's close it here, right? So I kept this main. I kept this toolbar, right, with the welcome, and in the and so I've kept this div, right? We can let's write here welcome to let's use the title app. Okay, and let's remove the rest. Let's keep this main div, but I don't need the other ones, so let's remove the other ones. Okay, and this one should be closed here. I think if everything is fine, it should be here, right? So you have this div, this image, which is the Angular image. I have an error, right? The Angular image. Let me see the error. So it seems like SAS complains of the fact it complains of this style. So as CSS was more flexible. Right, so I mean, this is just font size, we don't really need this. We should just, we can just write this. It should be okay. I actually don't know SAS. Right, but it should work. Wait, I think it wants to be specified like this, probably. Let's see. No, it's not okay. Let me try to remove this. And let me try to comment this first. If I can. Okay, let me just remove it. And then I'll paste it again to see if it's a problem with this first selector, because I don't really actually need it. Save. Yeah, so I still have a problem. Okay, so what we can do is just change this to SCSS as in the previous example. So just rename this. And SCSS, right? And we also have to change it. Well, I hope we don't need to change it here. In the spec. So we should have chosen SCSS first when we created the application. I'm not going to do that now. Let's go here and change this to SCSS, so to this file. Also, I think we need to go here into the module. Yeah, I think that should be it. Let's see if there's still an error. No error. Okay. Okay, so remember to use the SCSS and to choose the SCSS style preprocessor in the beginning, because this one allows to write I don't actually know Sass. This one allows you to write regular CSS in the style file. Okay, let's see if the application worked. It seems that I didn't save the component where I removed parts of it, so let's save this one. I still have an error here. Because it tries to build with Sass. Okay, I think the easiest way in order to, well, I don't want to, we need to change, I mean, we can try to change the preprocessor of the application. I don't know exactly where I can change that. Let me quickly see if I can do that. It should be somewhere here in packages. Maybe it's here. Hopefully it's on, no, it's in several places. Let's try to change it in all these places, and if it doesn't work, I need to create another application. I wanted to avoid this because you've seen that it takes a couple of minutes to. Probably it doesn't work. Okay, and I don't think this. Okay, so hopefully we don't have to change that. Hopefully I don't need to change that here either. Right, package lock, I don't think it's important. Right, I don't need to change anything here. I don't need to change anything here, and I don't need to change. Hopefully. I'm not sure if it works, probably it won't. Yeah, I don't think it will work. Let's try again to serve it. And if it doesn't work, I'll create a new application. Let me check that the video recording is still working. So let's wait a little bit, right? Yeah, let's drop this, remove the application, right? Okay. Yeah. I'll delete this. Student app. Should have done this. Okay, and we'll create a new application. Okay, let's see if this is done. No, it's not done. all of them. The Angular application requires a lot of Node.js packages. And that's why we have to wait. So I'm going to build another student application that uses SCSS as style preprocessor, because SCSS, I don't know actually Sass, and SCSS allows me to write regular CSS in the style files. So hit this again. Yeah, this will also take some time. I wanted to do I wanted to do this lecture as a 1 hour lecture, but it seems that it will take 2 hours. Okay, strict not. Yes, although I don't need it. Let's choose SCSS, like the first one. Now we wait while the Angular client gets all the Node.js packages. And we wait. Let me see if the ng command created a directory, and it created a source, right, and the app, right. So we can open this. I mean, it should be already opened. Let's open the previous existing app. Let's go to Sublime. I think I should do a refresh here, or reopen, open recent. Let me try this. Let me remove this and add it again, right. Open folder. So it's, I think it's this one, right? So Angular student app source app. Okay, this one still installs packages. Let me just work on this, what I've told you. So remove this, remove the style. Well, actually we'll remove everything, and we'll remove everything and just copy it from the existing application. I chose to just leave these comments here. Okay, and let's copy that from the existing application, which is this one. Okay, so we'll just we don't need the style. We just copy the toolbar, the blue toolbar in the beginning, and I think that's also this one, and we don't need this yet. We will copy this later. So I'm just going to place the toolbar, the blue toolbar with the angular image, and I'm just going. I just wrote here. I just used this title app, right? And here, the main content will just close it. Okay. Let me also copy the styles in this CSS, right? This is just font settings. This is for the toolbar, the top blue toolbar. This is for the angular image in the toolbar, and this is for the center content. So not very complicated style. Take this and just place it here in the SCSS. So remember again that remember again that for the component class is this one for the app component root component. I have this property defined here. I can define some other properties. Author. Right, and I can use this in the HTML template. Each component has a style selector, which is this one. Actually, this is just the tag name for this component that I can use in an HTML file, this component, by just placing the app root tag, HTML tag. Because this is the root component, I don't actually need to do this because this is the one that it's served by default, okay? But I will use the tag selector for these other components that I will create. This is the HTML template file, so this is the HTML file that will be displayed for this component, and this is the style for this component. Okay, and all the other components that I will create, meaning the student component and the student grades component, will have 3 separate files. Okay, let's see if this is done. Yeah, this should be done. Let's go to student app, and let's write ng-serve, and also wait until this is done. Let me save this, and then save this, and then save this, and wait until this building process and starting of the HTTP server is done. It takes quite a couple of minutes when you first run it, but if you leave it running, then it works a lot faster. You just need to change. You just change files here, and then you change files here, and this ng tool will capture that, will realize that you've changed a couple of the files, and it will rebuild the application on the fly. And it will also trigger a refresh in this browser. So far we have this error because it's not built. The application is not built yet. Should wait. it's so we will have actually two server application. We will have one application server which is the UI located here. Let me refresh it because I think it's done. And then we'll have another application server which is that PHP server, which is, well, not this one. Actually the entry point is the controller PHP. So let's go here. Okay, so the application runs. I have here the student app. Okay, we can also write the author if I want. Okay. Author, and I can just use that author property, which is this one. Where is it? Here. No, sorry. Here. The author, right? And I just need to save this. Sorry, I don't need this. Also, I don't need this. I just need to save this HTML, and the ng tool captures this. It sees that it was modified. The date is wrong here. It sees that it is modified, and it automatically reloads this. Okay. It redeploys, and I see this here. No error in the console. That's it. Okay. Let's add a new component. Let's add the student. So we need to stop this, and we need to add a new component called the student component. So ng generate student. Let me check, is it student or students? Because I will be pasting code from this other working application. So it's students component and students grades component. Okay, so we'll generate the students component, the students component, and also students grades component, although we'll start with the students component and then we'll move to the students grade component. But we should generate them right now. So that I should also, so when it completed, you can see here that it generated the student component here as a directory, right? Which has student component HTML, student component CSS, this specification file that we will ignore, and this TS file. Okay, let me close all of them. Right, now we should normally wait because we don't use the other component yet, students grades, but we should do it, we should create it right now. Students grades. So that when we run ngserve later, we don't have to stop it and then run ngserve again. Normally we should also create the service, which is this service, which is a service type component, but I think that's counterintuitive, and I will create that later. So let's hit ngserve again, right? And let's start modifying first the student component, right? Let's take the CSS part first. So you see this other directory here, student grades. So we are now working with this component. Let's modify the style file. Let me show you. Okay, so it shows you here that we import the component and init from Angular core. This is a component. This class actually is a component, right? It has a constructor, an ng init that runs when the component is initialized. The name of the component is student component according to the name I provided. The selector is app student. The HTML template is this file, student component HTML, this one, which just shows this, and the CSS style file is this one. Okay, this one here, which is empty. Okay, let's start to modify the style file. Let's see if I've used something in the previous in the existing application. So students SCSS. Yeah, I think it's for that table, for displaying everything in the table. So I have the students table and the hover and the selected one. Let's just copy. This is just CSS. I won't insist on this. So let's copy it here. Okay, I didn't copy it. Control V. Save it, and we won't use this anymore. Okay. Let's go to the HTML component first, right? So let's copy this, and I'll tell you about this. So what I have here, so I'm using the, I have a small message here, okay? I'm using the table class, sorry, the students table class, and what I have here is, these are JavaScript variables. So the students JavaScript variable, actually it's actually a property that we will add to this component. We will add a property here, student, okay? Students. I mean, let's just add that yet. Okay, let's add it. So the most important functionality is in the TypeScript file, right? So we add the students property, right? And I think we can ignore those. Yeah, we can ignore those for now. Okay, let's add the student property. So this is just a property, a field of this class, okay, named student. Remember that TypeScript is typed JavaScript, so we need to specify the type. And I specify that the student is just an array of student objects, and it's initialized with an empty array. Right now, I should have an error in this ngserve if I save it, right? There's an error because it doesn't know, it doesn't have the student type, okay? It doesn't know of the student type. That's why I need to add some interfaces in the root of this app with the student type, and also later on I need the grade. I need the grade type. So let's take the student type first. I need to import. Sorry, yeah, I need this. Let's take the student type, which is this one, right? And this one also uses the grade type. Let's take the grade type first. Okay, so this is just a TypeScript interface specifying the fields. The fields, the type of the fields are number and string. So we'll create the grade TS file here. So new file, and where we place this, and this we save this as grade TS in the root, right? Right, grade TS. And then we also save, we don't need this anymore, and then we also save the student TS. Did I close it? Yeah. Okay, then we also need the student TS. Let's take everything. This is, so we create another interface which exports the exported from the JavaScript. So remember ECMAScript 6. So it just exports this interface to some other module. Also the import is also from JavaScript. It imports this grade, which is this grade class, right? This grade class, because it's exported from here. And this one is, so we import the grade class from the grade TS file. This is from JavaScript, regular JavaScript. I mean ECMAScript 6, but it's JavaScript. Okay, let's save this into the student.ts here. And then we can import this into the student component, the student component TS. We can import it here by just copying it from, we import student from student and grade from grade. We use the parent directory because remember we are now here in this directory, but this grade and student TS are in the parent directory. So we need to import them here. Okay, let's save now everything, and let's see if there is an error. There's no error anymore. Okay, now student is fine. So let's go back to the template of the student. Okay, so what I want here is just use the student property of the component class, which don't need this, which is here. So this student component class has a property, a private property called students, which is an array of students, which is empty first. We will populate this later from the PHP server side. So just take all the students from all the student object from the students array. This is what ng4 does, and create for, we'll ignore this for now, and create a table row for each student. Okay, this is what the ng4 directive does. It creates several tags, tr tags, one for each of the students in the students array. Okay, and for each student we create some table data in the table in this tr, and we just specify the student name, the name property of the student, the password, and the group ID. These are the properties specified here: the name, the password, and the group ID. We can also use the grades or the ID, but we chose not to use those, just these three properties. So this will be displayed here in separate table data. Okay, and we will have a table row for each student in the students property array. The students array is this one, remember, is this one, the students array, which is now empty. Okay, but this is what ng4 does. Let me save this. Okay, everything is compiled correctly, and let me refresh this in the browser. We don't need to because it's automatically refreshed, so nothing is displayed, right? Right. This is because this is a component. In order to display things, we need to add this component to the root component, which is, if you remember, this app component, which is the root one. We need to include this component into the app component, which is the root. And we will do this like that. I don't think we need anything. Yes, we don't need this here, right? We just need to modify the. We just need to modify the HTML template. So in the content, we will add this app student. Okay, this app student, which is. Let me add this. Right. Let me add this, and I'll tell you about this. So remember that for this student component specified here, the selector is app students, right? And then we go here, and then we add here. We don't want our students, so we could just comment this everything. Yeah. Let's comment this. Okay, let's comment this for now. And also this part. Right. And now we just have our app students component inserted here. The app student component is this one. You remember from here, this is the app student component, app students component, which just displays this. Okay, not this, sorry. This, it displays this. It displays a heading and a table with a list of students, right? But so let's save this, everything. We save this. Let's see if everything is okay. It is okay, and let's go to the browser. Okay, now we have the list of students, which is this text, and then we also have a table, but we don't have any students in it because the student property of the class, which is here, is just empty, right? But the table is visible here. We can inspect it. If my, okay, I don't need this. I also don't want this print. Okay, just inspect this. Okay, so you actually see here the heading and also the table, right? So this is the heading generated. Let me increase this the development tools window, and then we have the table, but the table does not have any row because there's no student in the students array. Okay, now we have to populate this students array by calling the PHP backend service. I mean this backend service, right? By calling the controller. And how do we do this? Well, we need to create another type of component which is called a service, and in that service we need to use an HTTP client. So first let's create a service. Let's call it generic service. So I need to stop this and so generate this time not a component but a service, and the name of the service should be generic because it performs all the calls to the PHP server. Okay, so it generated the specification file which we don't use and the TS file. This type of component does not have a template or a style. It is used only for business logic. Okay, to pass, for example, it doesn't have a template. It's used for business logic of the application. Let's serve the application again, and while the application is served, we will modify the service and the students component. Okay, so see here it generated this specification file that we won't use, and this this TS file. Okay, so let's try to copy parts from the generic service. So we need to import here the HTTP client, HTTP headers, because we will use the HTTP client, right? We also need to import this observable. I'll tell you in a minute about that. This is for errors, and we also need the student and the grade that we just created. So let's import those. And let's go here. So this is the generic service, right? Okay, we've imported here. This one, it has a class here with a constructor. It says here that it's an injectable server, meaning that we can inject singleton objects from this class into root in every component that we want, because this is provided in root. So we can inject singleton object. Actually, we want the Angular framework injects. We just need to specify where I want this singleton object of this class to be injected, and we will specify this in the students component. Okay, how do we specify this? Well, we get here, right? And we need to import it here. Okay, from the generic service file. So go to here, we need to import it, and then we also need to we can inject it by specifying here in the constructor. Okay, so we need a generic service object of this type, right? So we can inject it into this constructor, and the Angular framework will automatically create an object of this type, a singleton object, and it will add it as a private property of this class, student component, right? Then we need to, we don't need this right now, we've injected it. Now let's go to the generic service and see what we can use here. So we need first to declare like the URL of the PHP backend that we will use, okay? So we will use the API HTTP localhost WP PDO controller PHP, which is the URL of this application. But of course, this prima pagina.html, this is the UI that we will replace with Angular. The actual backend is PDO MVC and then controller controller PHP. This is the entry point of the application. Okay. Let me do this again. So that's why I need this URL, and we will add to this URL the query string when we issue requests. Okay, let's see what else we need. This is not actually required, but well, we can put it here. Yeah. Actually, I didn't use this anymore. In order to specify specific custom fields of HTTP requests that are served through the through the HTTP client that is imported here. Okay, the HTTP client is also injected here, like that. We declare it in the constructor. Okay, and it's automatically injected by Angular, right? And we have this private field HTTP, and now we should create some methods. Okay, let's create some methods. We'll just copy all the methods, or okay, let me just copy this method first, right? This method. And we will use this method in order to load data from the server. In order to load the students with grades. Sorry, we also, this one is easier, without grades. Let's copy this one too, which loads students without grades. Actually in this component, in the students component, we will be using this function, and in the students with grades, which I didn't modify yet, we will use this function. Okay, what this function does is the following. So it is, the name of the function is fetch students. Okay, it returns an observable because let's see what we do here. So here we just issued a request using the HTTP object, this object. We issue a GET request, which receives as response a JSON containing, which is automatically converted to by the Angular application, actually by the HTTP client, this one from the Angular application, which is automatically converted to a vector of students, where the student is this type, the student, right, this one. And it sends a request, a GET request, which receives as response a JSON vector of students, and this request is sent to this backend URL, which is this one, to which we concatenate the query string, which is action get all student, meaning it sends this request concatenated with action get all student, which would respond with this. Let me concatenate it from. Okay, we will get this list of students as a JSON array, right? That's it. And that result is returned here as an observable vector of student. Okay, and we can register a subscriber for this method, and that the subscriber for this method will be a callback function, which is called when the response from the server is received, and we will do that in the student component. Okay, and here, after executing this, we also call another method if we get an error, so catch error. And if we catch an error, we just execute this function handle with the parameter fetch student and an empty array. And we will just copy this function, which is just a generic function, which is I've taken it from the Angular official Angular tutorial, which just this one, which just, let me close this, which just prints something on the screen. On the console. So if there is an error, okay, we just call this handle error method, which is parameterized here with this type. In our case, it's a vector of students. The operation is this one, and the result is this one. And what it does is just return an error and also print the error on the console. That's it. So just a generic it's just a generic error handling function, which I've taken from the official Angular tutorial here. This tutorial. Where is the tutorial? I think it's there. No. Try. No. Yeah, here. From this tutorial, Tour of Heroes. So I've taken that function from here. Skip over that one. Okay, so if there is an error, we call this function. this handle error function. Sorry, here, we were here. If there is an error, call this function. We need this function to return an observable because the way the HTTP client from Angular is implemented, and it's the good way in which it is implemented, it's an asynchronous call, just like this is equivalent. This is Ajax, okay? This is equivalent to the HTTP XML HTTP object, Ajax object from the browser that we use in order to issue Ajax calls. So this will send the request here, and when the response is received, we can use a callback function that will be called, okay? And how is this callback function called? We will see right now. We need to add some code into this student component. So remember that the function that we will use is the function fetch students from the generic service, okay? And we will use that right now here. The generic service is injected here, the generic service object. And let's take, what do we need? We call this function in the ng init, and this function get student is, we will see what it does here. Okay, we should go here and declare another function which is called getStudents, and we will call this function when our component initializes here, okay? This dot get students, right? This get student, it's a function which returns nothing. We can call the function from the generic servers like this if it didn't return an observable, but we can call it synchronously like this and wait for the result. But since it returned an observable, we need to call it like this. So we call it like this. So this dot generic service, which is this private field, which is an object of type generic service, called the fetch student method, fetch students method, which is here, the fetch students method, which returns an observable of an array of students. And we call subscribe, okay, which when the result is received by this function, when there is a modification to the return of the function, so when the HTTP result is received by this function, this is due to the fact that we've specified the return type of this function to be observable. So when the result is received, the HTTP result is received by this function, this callback function is called. Remember the fat arrow notation. So the callback function has a student's parameter, and the body of the function is just to assign this student parameter to the dStudent property, which is this one. This is the students, okay? Okay? And once I assign this, once this variable is assigned here, okay, it's automatically used here in the student component here when we parse the student property and take all the students from students and display them, okay? So when I assign a value to this one, it's automatically used here, and this table is built here. So the students are loaded here, right? So I think that's almost it, right? So here, when this component, student component, is loaded, when it is initialized, I call this method, and this method calls the fetch student method from the generic service, which gets the data from the server side here. If there is an error, it calls this function, doesn't matter. And when this method, when the HTTP client receives a result, an HTTP response from the PHP server, from this controller, it returns it calls, because it returns an observable, it calls this callback function, which just assigns the student's array received from the PHP server to the local property students, which then triggers this component, the students component, to actually display the students in a table, because it takes each student from the students array and displays them in the table, right? And since this student component, since this student component, which is described here, by this tag selector app students. This component is included in the root component of our Angular application here. It's included here. When I load, if everything was correct, okay, it is correct. When I load the root component, which is this one, so when I load the Angular page, we should see a list of students, a table with a list of students. Okay, let's reload. So we don't see the list of students. Why is this? It should be because, let me see if I saved everything. Okay, I don't know if I saved everything, so save this. And then save this. I mean, normally I should get an error. Okay, but I didn't get the error. Okay, this get student is called on init. We can also use the console log here if we want to. Okay, let's save this one. So I've saved this one, then save this one, then this one, then this one. Okay, and this one includes the app students component, which is here, app students. So I think it's a new build here. Okay, and now it seems better. So I have an error. So I have an error here, no provider for HTTP client, which means I didn't include something, I think in the modules file. I didn't include the HTTP in the modules, I think here. Let's see. I think that's it. Let's see in the working application app module. Okay, so we need to include the HTTP client. We will also include the browser module and force module. We will use those later. And then we also need to specify them here in the imports, right? So we need to include those. This is the modules. Okay, the browser module is already included. I'll just remove it here. And then we also need to add them here in the imports. So the HTTP client that we use and the forms module we will use later. Okay, I think this should be it. Let me leave this open, maybe we still need something. So this specifies the modules, this one specifies the modules used by our Angular application. Let's see if it's okay. Yeah. Let's go to the browser. Let's try to reload it. Now recompiling, okay. It compiles. Okay. If I reload it, so I see list of students, then I still see this error, right? Which is linked to XML HTTP request, so it's linked to Ajax because I've told you that this actually, let me close this because we don't need it anymore. Because I've told you that this generic service, this HTTP client, which is described here, just performs an Ajax call to this one, okay, to this server side. And the thing is that we can also see it here in the network. There was a controller core, a controller PHP call, but the response is cross-origin resource sharing error. And we also see the error here, cross-origin. And the thing is that we need to call a resource from this the browser needs to call a resource that originated from this web server to another origin, to another web server, which is this one, localhost on another port, so another web server. Okay, and there's a security policy of the browser called the same origin policy, which is described here in the developer Mozilla. If you search for cross-origin resource sharing, also here, if it loads, okay, and the idea is that if this is the browser and requests something from this server domain.a.com, okay, and this one returns the main page, and then this browser can send subsequent requests to this server, like layout CSS, image PNG, or other Ajax calls, and they will be served to the browser, and the browser will just interpret them. But if the same document loaded by the browser would send a request to another server, not this one, but another one on a different domain, in our case, it's not on a different domain. It's on the same local host. It's sent to the same local host, but it's a different server because it's on a different. It listens on a different port. This is port 80, and our Angular service runs on port 4200. Okay, so it is a different origin. So if it sends a request to a different origin, then the browser does not allow it. It sends the request, but it does not interpret the result. It doesn't use the result unless this server specifies that it can be used. Its output can be used for some other origins. Okay, for some other origins. So the idea is depicted better here. The idea is that when the browser issues the request to this PHP server, to the second server, okay, it sets an HTTP header field called origin. When the PHP server, my PHP server, this one, receives the request from the Angular service, it needs to set the access control origin to specify the origins that are allowed to call its resources. Or it can specify this star, which means that this server allows all other servers to use its resources. And when the browser receives the response, if the HTTP response header has this field with the star or with the localhost specified, then it displays the HTTP response from this server. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to set the access control allow origin header in the PHP server, which I already did, but then I commented out in the controller because I only call the controller and the controller calls this other PHP file. So I only need to set it here. So I need to set the access control allow origin to start to everything in the controller. This is in order to allow the Angular UI server to call my PHP server. Okay. I won't insist too much on this because the lecture becomes very, very long. You can read this. You can read more about course if you from here or from Mozilla. You just issue course cross-origin resource sharing in the Google. Okay, in Google. So let me just close this because I don't need them anymore. And now if I've saved, so I don't need this. So I've saved the controller PHP, and now let's try to load everything in the browser. Okay, let's go here. Let's do a reload. Okay, and now it works. Okay, if we look here in the controller, there's no error. It received the JSON expression of all the students without grades. Okay, so the grades are, as you see here. So the grades are null. Okay. So now we see the list of students, right? We can also, okay, let me see what we can do. Yeah, we can go here. We can go to the root component. This let me see if I've copied everything from the existing app to the student component here. So get students. Let me see if we have something else here, so that we are done with this component. Okay, F3. Yeah, I also have this method. This is I also have this method. Let's just add it, but that method is actually not that important. We can select a student. It's more important for the second component, that is the student grade component. The student's grade component. This method is actually called here. So if I click a student, this is event bounding. Okay. If I click one table row, it will select the student for this table row, the student displayed for this table row, and call this onSelect method. And this onSelect method is described here. Okay, onSelect, the parameter is student, and this is the body of the method, which returns void, and it just prints to the console that this student name is selected. That's it. We don't need that anymore. We can see this here. Okay, but if I click here, you see that student 2 is selected. If this one does not have a name, whatever. Okay, we can also do some modification in the root component, which is this one here. Let's say I don't want this list of students to be displayed when I load the application. I want a button to click the button and then load this. And I'm creating a button for this, right? And also this. Okay, let's leave this for now the way they are. So I'm creating this button is also used for the student grades component that we didn't modify it, but we'll just leave this button here, but it's not used right now. So we have a button, we have an event binding. When I click this button, this button just displays this value, which is the name of a property of this root component, which is not added yet, but let's add it here. Okay. So app component TS, right? So let's add here some properties like this ones. Let's also add everything, and I'll tell you about this. Okay, so I have these properties. Let's add some other properties. Okay, I think we don't need this. We should just replace this with student grades. It's a better name. So we have the title, then we have some Boolean properties, show student panel, show student caption, show grades. We'll just ignore these ones with the grades. Show grades, we'll ignore these ones. And we also ignore this function because this function and these two properties are used for this component that we didn't use yet. So let's use only this one. So this show student panel is just a Boolean variable initialized with false, and show student caption is this caption that is displayed here, right? It is displayed here, right? And when I click this button, the onClick show student without students without parameter is called, and that method is this one, onClick show student. What it does is if this show student panel is false, it is set to true. If it is true, it is set to false. And if it's set to true, if it's set to true, let's just ignore this. The idea is that we change the caption here, and then we also if this one is set to true, right? If this show student panel is if I click the button, if I click this button, then this method onClick show student get executed. The method onClick show student, what it does is set this to true. Okay, sets the students panel to true, or sets it to false if its previous value was true. Let's ignore this for the moment. So it just sets this to true, and then if we go back here, what we see here is this div. Let me uncomment it because there is an error. Okay, I see this div, and I see this ngIf. This is another Angular directive similar to the one we've used here. So this is another Angular directive which cycles through the values of this array. the one that I'm showing right now is this one. So if this show student panel has the value true, only in that case display this div. Otherwise, don't display it. By default, the show student panel is false, right? But it is set to true here if I click the button. Okay, so let's save everything. See if there is an error. There's no error. Reload this if necessary, but we don't need to. This button is the second button that I didn't explain yet. The second button, I just left it. Okay, we don't want this yet. And if I click the student button, then the show student panel will be set to true by this method. And because it is set to true, it is automatically, this div is automatically displayed here, okay? Right now we don't have this div, okay? If I inspect this, so inspect, we have here the main, which, let's see what the main contains. It contains 2 buttons and that's it. This ngIf is false, so we don't have this other div, okay? We don't see this div here, right? But if I click this button, okay, the show student panel is set to true by this click handler, and because it is set to true, show student panel it is true, then this div is added to the student component. Okay, you can see it here, it's added here, right? It's this div that contains the app student, right, which displays this. So I hope you understood this. Let's use, and also the code, you see, yeah, the code, this code used for the onClick event just changes the text of the button. If I've just showed the button, just changes the caption to hide student. If it is hidden, just changes it to show student, okay? And it uses some variables, these variables, caption and caption, which are used here as the caption of the button, okay? So if I click hide, then this one will be hidden, and now the text of the button is changed to show. If I click show, it is displayed, and the caption of the button is changed to hide. Okay, let's also do this second one, right? Which actually doesn't do anything yet, but the idea is that if I click the second button, let's also it's a similar way, but this time I'm using the show student panel, and I'm using the second component, the student's grade component, which is the selector of that component is used here, not the student component, okay? And here in the app TS, I have similarly on show student grade, so on, which does similar to this one, on click student. Let's save everything, right? Let's see if there is an error. No error. Let's click the other one, okay? I see an error here. I mean this one. I should remove this. Okay, if I click this one, it just displays. If I click this one, it displays this. If I click this one, sorry, if I click this one, it just displays the template of the student's grade component, meaning it is just this one, this template. Student grades work. So let's work on this component also, okay? Let's change the HTML file first. Sorry, let's change the SCS file first, this one, it's easier. This is a little bit more complicated because it displays the students with the grades, and it also allows you to change the grades or to add a new grade or to delete to remove a grade. So let's go here, let's use the SCS, okay. Style, I won't insist on this, let's just copy it here and save it. Let's go then to the HTML template. So I have some things here. Let's copy everything, but I mean, let's copy this first. I only need this one. Okay, let's copy this. You should understand this, right? Because it's similar to what I've used in the student component. right. So what I have here, the list of students. I also have, well, I have a table, and I also parse the students. Okay, parse the students, which is the student property. I have to add it here. I have to add it here because there's nothing here, but I have to add it. Let me also close some of the generic service I use, and so I parse the students, yeah, and display the student name, password, and group, and also I have another table data which parses the grades from the stud grades, which this time is received from the PHP server, okay, and then I'll display this in, I display this grade is this object, okay, I display the course and the grade of this object. Remember that the grade object and the grade object and the student object are defined here. Grade is here, and student is here with this field. Okay, let me add the functionality to student grades component TS here, which is quite a lot. I mean, not that much, but so I need to add these imports, the generic service, and those. Right? Please see that the selector for this students grades component is this one, app students grades, which is used here in the root component, right? App students grades, right? Okay, let me add stuff again. So I think I'm just going to replace everything. So that it works faster, okay? So I won't spend that much time here, but I will explain everything. Okay, so I have here the students property, which is empty. I have another selected student, which is specified here that the type, I mean, it specifies here that it can be null, so it can be absent, which is useful for clicking a specific student from the Angular UI and selecting a specific student. When I select a specific student, I will assign this property to that student. I don't need this anymore, and some error message. Yeah. The constructor just injects a generic service, just like we did for the student component. It calls getStudent in it. Okay, the getStudent is almost similar to the getStudent in this component, but see here, not quite. This one calls, the getStudent calls the fetchStudent method from the generic service, right? This one calls the fetchStudents with grades from the generic service. So we need to add that, which is just similar to the fetchStudent method from the service, but because it calls the PHP backend, but it also adds the grade to the students. And then it's similar, it just loads everything into this local data, okay? We should probably ignore this update grade and add grade and delete grade for now. On select, this one is used here. So if I click on a student, then this method on select is called, which is this one, which assigns the selected student the student that is clicked. Okay, it also changes here. This is one-way binding. It also sets the class property to selected of this student that is selected. If the stud is equal, if the stud that is used for this table row is equal to the selected student property, this stud is this one, this variable, local variable, and the selected student is this property defined here, right? And if they are equal, identical, then the class of this table row is set to selected. So this is simple binding. I mean one-way binding in Angular, because you bind a DOM property, okay, a DOM property of this tag, right? You bind it to a property of the component, right? Because this is a property. This is field of this component, student grades component. Okay, let me save this. I've skipped this update grade, delete grade, and add grade. So I've explained you this get students and onSelect. So I need to add this method to the generic service, right? Let's go to the generic service. I mean, it's already added here. So fetch student with grades. It's similar to fetch student, the method used in students, but now we call the back URL with get. Instead of calling get all students, we call get all grades. The action is get all grades, and otherwise the same. It returns an observable. The difference between get all grades and get all students, we can see it here. So get all grades and get all students. When I call get all students, it calls the get all students method, this one. But when I call get all grades, it calls the get all students with grades in the model, which returns also the grades. I won't go into the model again and into the repo class because you've already seen how they work. Okay, so this one is already here. Let's save it. Let's see if everything is okay. It seems okay. These were temporary errors, so I think everything is fine. This is the previous functionality, but now if I call this one, it doesn't work, so we still have an error, or it does. No, it doesn't work. Let's see if the call is performed. It is performed. No, this get all students. No, the call is not performed, okay? So it's not called yet. Let's save all the files and then see if everything is correct. So fetch method with grades, yeah, this seems to work. Right, then let's go to student grades component. Right, let's save this one. Let's go to this TS file. So we have this get student, which is called here, which is saved here, which is called here, right? It replaces the students. Should be okay. Okay, so I have some errors. Yeah, I have some errors. I didn't save this. Okay, I don't have. Let's comment this these calls, and then we will uncomment them. So the problem was that I didn't save the students grades component TS file. So let's comment first this functions because I don't have the actual functions that are called in the generic service. I don't have yet the update grade function from the generic service and these other functions. So let's just comment them out here. Okay, it seems okay. Let me try now. Right, so we see now. Okay. I can also select this, but right now nothing happens. Only the class of this table row changes. Okay, changes to selected. We can see that. Let me inspect this. So you see here that the class is selected, right? And for the other ones, it's not selected. This is the one-way binding of the class DOM property to this condition, right? So if I click this class, then the class is the class property has the value of selected, as you see here. The class is equal to selected, which is described. The selected class is described somewhere here. Here, it is selected. Okay, with a different color. Okay, so hopefully you understood this, and now let's continue with the last part of the tutorial, and that is let's uncomment these parts of adding grades and removing grades. So I have these methods: update grade, delete grade, and add grade. Update grade and delete grade are easier to explain. I mean easier, they are similar. This one is also easy, but it's a little bit different. So it has a parameter, a student, and a grade, and we use this error message. This is just for displaying something. This error message will be displayed on the template. I'll show you in a minute. But I just call the update grade method from the generic service, and when the result is received, I just need to, I call this callback function, which just takes the response. And remember that if I add a grade, okay, let me see if it works. Okay, if I add a new grade, right, for student 15, 11, I think, the result is just this JSON expression with one property, result, and the value of that property is success, right? Here, normally I should have created, like, I created this types, grade and students, which are received as an array of students and an array of grades from the PHP server side. So I didn't want to create one, like a result interface with a property result and a specific value. And I mean, it would probably have been a better idea to create another object here for the result with one property called result. But I didn't do that. Actually, I've taken the JSON expression from the response, from the PHP server. I've converted it to the type any, which means it doesn't have a type, just like in JavaScript. And then I've accessed the result property of R, okay, like this, just like I do it in JavaScript, where there are no types. I mean, there are no where the type can change, the type of a variable can change. So this is how let's say I dropped the capabilities of TypeScript to plain JavaScript. So I just converted the JSON received from PHP, from the PHP server. I converted it to any, okay, because I don't actually have an interface corresponding to that response, and I didn't want to create one. And then I access the result fit here, and the same here. And I just set it to this error message, which error message it is displayed here. It's not yet, but I need to add functionality. So I need to add this functionality. So if a student is selected, let me add it here. So if a student is selected, meaning if this selected student has a value, it is selected when I click on a row, because this event handler gets executed. So when I select a student, I just add another div down here, which just displays the student grades. How? Well, it displays a table here, right? And it takes all the grades from the selected student grades. The selected student is this one. Is this property, the selected student, this one, which is assigned here by this onSelect event handler, which gets triggered when the user clicks on a table row. Okay, this onSelect gets called, and it sets the selected student property. And here I just take the grades of the selected student and display them in table data. This is also binding, okay, one-way binding. So I'm setting the ID attribute to this value of this input. It's not really necessary. I'm using here a string, and I'm using the name of the course in the grade object. It's not really necessary. I can remove this, and also this one. This one is important though, and I'll tell you about that in a couple of seconds. Okay, let's ignore that for now. And then I have two buttons, one for that calls the update grade, and another one that calls the delete grade, right? With the parameter selected student, the one that is selected here, and the value grade, the grade that is displayed here, this grade. And this one is for adding a new grade, okay? Let me just skip over this, for adding a new grade to the current student. Here I have just a span where this error message is displayed. This error message, which is set here when calling update grade, and which is set here when calling delete grade, and set here when calling add grade. Right now I have an error, I think, or no, because I didn't save the generic. I didn't save this. I have errors because I need to add those functions to the generic service. So let's go to the generic service. So let's also add, so I have this, I've added the fetch students method, the fetch student with grades method, and I also need to add the upgrade update grade and the delete grade and the add grade. This error message this error function we already had, the generic error function. So let's go to the generic and add it here. Okay, so basically what we do here is just we this update grade which receives a student and a grade. It also returns an observable, but this time it's a string. It's just this string, this JSON string, right? And now it's this in the same way. It calls the backend with this action, but we also need update grade. We also need to add some other parameters to the query string. So the student ID is taken from here, the course name and the grade, right? And then also if there is an error, catch it with this generic handle error, which just prints something on the console. Okay? And the same for delete grade and the same for add grade, but with different actions. This one is remove grade and this one is add grade and some other parameters here, but the things are very similar. So let's save this, right? Let's also save this HTML and let's go also save this. This should complete our project. Everything is okay. Let's see if it works. So let's reload, although it's not necessary, it's automatically reloaded. So I see the students, right? I can select it, but nothing happens here. And I go here and I can select here, right? If I can select this student and I see that it doesn't have any grades. Let's select this one. It has this grade. I can change the grades. The grade for web programming, which was 7, let's give it a 10. You see that when I change this, it automatically changes it here. This is because of this double binding, which is specified here through this and through this, right? So when I change the grade, of the grade variable of the grade component of the selected student is this one. Is this property of the class, okay? So when I change a grade of this selected student, one grade, when I change the value in this input, okay, the value of that grade is automatically changed because of this double binding, okay? It is specified here. So when I change the value of the input, automatically the value of the grade is changed. And this grade is also used in this table. That's why it changes here in this table too. It doesn't change on the database though, but it is changed everywhere in Angular. And in order to change in the database, I need to click the update button. In order for the update grade to be called, the update grade will be called, which calls the update grade from the generic service, which calls the PHP server, which changes in the database, right? So let's call this way. And the result is success, that label. And of course here it's already changed, but we can see in the database if we want to. Or we can just reload this and you can see that the value has changed, okay? We can also remove those. We can delete those, delete this, okay? The result is success. Also delete this. Please see that in delete I didn't actually remove them from here, but they are removed from the database. Why? Because in delete I just called the server. Okay, I just called the service which deletes from the database, and normally I should have reload this, but I didn't. So if I just click this again, there are no grades for any courses here. If I select this one, there's no grade, but I can add one. So let's say for graphics, I add the grade 8. Okay, and I click this one, and it will be added in the database. I should have refreshed this one. I didn't, but if I do this, it is added here, right? And now I can change it and also add another one. So the add grade is done here. We use the add grade method of the generic service, and what I do here is I have a label with this ID and this Angular construct that allows me to use this DOM element corresponding to this input as a parameter here, okay, of this function. So when I click this button, I'm using the selected student and the value of this DOM input tag, and also the value of this DOM input tag. I could have also used like this. I could have used some variables and bind them like this. Okay, I could have used some variables here, some properties of this student grades component, some properties like this ones, and I could have bind them those values to this DOM element and to this DOM element, but I wanted to try the different way. So this is using this construct. This is the ID. I can access in Angular the DOM element corresponding to this one, because remember, Angular is just a framework over JavaScript, so it is JavaScript plus additional functionalities, right? And here, for the add function, I just get the student, the input element for the course, the input of the grade, and I just get the value of the course input element and the value of the grade input element, and I create a new grade out of this. Okay, this is the type of this new grade, and I'm giving this new grade as parameter and student to the add grade of the generic service. The generic service, if you see here, so it has a parameter, a student and a grade, and it just calls this for adding to the server. So I think, let me save all of this, and so hopefully hopefully you've understand how Angular works. It's not a complete Angular tutorial, but it's the basic things, and you will find this Angular application, which is now here. The student app, of course, I'll delete the modules and I'll leave only the source, and also this one because it's not large, and also so I'll keep only the source. I'll remove the contents of the node modules, and I'll do a zip with this, and I'll post this application on the course's web page here. Somewhere here. The PHP backend, the PDO MySQL, the PHP server that I used is already placed here in the. Sorry, I'll place the Angular here after the PHP. I mean, here actually. Here I'll place the Angular application, and the server is here. It's already here, the PDO MVC zip. So thank you for listening if you were here, and I'll stop the course right now.